Hello everyone. Welcome to the interview preparation series third video, and we're going to talk about some more interview questions which may be more basic as well as a little advanced, and we'll go through them and try to understand. And it's a mixture of SQL and Informatica. There is no very particular order that which we are going through, but let's try to understand what we have, right? Yeah, most of you may be knowing about the different type of joins, what we have within the SQL. In general, when somebody asks you about the joins and what is the best way to explain, I'm going to stress upon that. In SQL, we can talk about the four type of joins majorly. One is your normal join, and another is your within outer joins, you basically call as a left outer join, and you call the other one as a right outer join, and also the full outer join, right? So basically, I mean, how the data actually work and all of that. So in order to explain, right? So whenever you say about the normal join always gives you the matching data between the two tables based on the join condition, like whatever you write based on the join condition, it will give you. So when I say normal join here, it is nothing but a inner join as well. You can call this as an inner join, which it is there. So based on the matching condition. So let's take a quickly look at maybe through the SQL developer. I'm not sure if I kept it open. Let's quickly take a look at the execution of a data between I mean, what will happen when you write a query? I may not be executing all of the queries through that, but I'll just try to show you how you can write the join condition basically, right? So maybe I can just check if there are some tables available here, or we can go to even SDBU schema, which is our training schema generally, which we do. Okay, so this maybe doesn't have the HR schema related objects. I'll probably go and take a look at, okay, maybe I think we have a employee as well as a department. So let's quickly take a look at how we can join this. So if I go to data, you'll be having, there are four departments, like which has 10, 20, 30, 40. And I go and take a look at the employee table. So wherein you have a department number, which is a foreign key from your department table. I mean, basically in the department table, it is a primary key, and in the employee table, it is a foreign key. So let's try to see basically, I mean, how basically it works. I mean, when you do it, right? So in order to experience the outer joins, I think, all of the, basically the employees have a department. Just for our learning purpose, I'll try to insert one record, maybe 9,000. Yeah, I'll probably call it as Karthik, and maybe a IT guy and manager, probably 7788, and maybe a hire date is 10th Jan 2022, and the salary maybe $5,000, and commission is null, and this guy doesn't have any department associated to him, just for example, right? So I'm just committing this. And now if you see, Karthik doesn't have any department which is assigned to him. And if you also closely observe, and you don't have any employees for a 40 department. So if you want to check that, we have 10, 20, 30, 40, but for a 40, you don't have. Okay, let me open this as well, right? So for a 40, you don't have any employees here. So let's quickly take a look at, writing these SQL queries and how a join basically work, right? So when you write basically the join between your, basically the join, or which you can probably call it as inner join, which it is there. And if you try to write the condition, so dot department ID, which is, sorry, maybe a department number, is equal to E dot department number. And you can select the set of columns from here, D dot D name, and maybe the D dot location, and probably the E dot employee name, E dot job. These are the columns that I'm executing it or probably selecting it, sorry. E dot manager, maybe the E dot salary, right? So these are the columns which I'm doing. So when I say this is your inner join, right? So basically it gives you the matching data between these two tables based on the join condition that you do. So where you have a department number is a common column. So if you execute it, right, this has given some set of records where there is a matching. But if you see, it wouldn't have written your 40 department, if you see, because 40 department doesn't have any kind of employees for a 40 department in employee table. That means there is no matching record. That's why D.DEPT number, there is an error. Let me quickly correct it and do. So D.DEPT number, and out of which, if you see, the 40 department is not being retrieved because 40 department doesn't have a matching employees in the employee table. And also the employee whom we have newly added, that Karthik, is not retrieved because that guy doesn't have a department associated. So which means this will give you the matching data between the two tables, like what you have. That is your inner join. It doesn't give you the not matching data when you go for a left outer join, right? So let's say left join or left outer join, both are same. Outer is more like an optional keyword. Either you can join a left join or left outer join. So when you do that, department is on the left side, and basically an employee is your right table, if you consider, right? So when you say department D left outer join with employee E, it gives you the matching and unmatching data from your left table and only the matching data from your right table. So when I do now, I will also get a 40 department because it gives me the matching data and unmatching data from a left table, right? So matching data between both of them plus unmatching data from your left table, right? So basically from now, what is your left table here? Basically the department is your left table, what you have. So if I go and execute, you'll also get 40. Even though it doesn't have any employees, see, all the employee attributes are null, but still you're able to retrieve this 40 because it's a unmatching data from your left table. Similarly, when you do a right outer join or a right join, it will give you the unmatching data from a right table, whichever it is there. So unmatching data from a right table, I go here, and then you basically get all the unmatching data from a right table, which is your employee. So if you see now, Karthik also comes up, but this guy doesn't have any department which is associated. So Karthik record is picked up. So it's an unmatching data from a right table. So when you say basically full outer join, it will give you the matching as well as unmatching data from both the tables, right? So full outer join, it will give you the unmatching data from a department. It will give you the unmatching data from an employee as well. So matching and unmatching data. So what is a matching and unmatching criteria here? So matching means like wherever it finds this condition is evaluated to true, that is a matching record. And whenever this condition is not evaluated to true, that is an unmatching condition. But one thing that you have to remember is that matching condition means this is 1 equal to 1 is a matching condition. Or basically 1 equal to 2 is not a matching condition. Even if it is like 1 equal to null, it evaluates to null and it is not a matching condition. So this is false, 1 equal to 2 is false. This is a false condition. This is an unmatching criteria. Even if you compare it with a null also, that is an unmatching criteria which you need to treat it. So always 1 equal to 1 current, like 10 equal to 10 or 20 equal to 20. So something that is called as a matching data, and that gets evaluated to true whenever you call it as a condition. So left table, it gets unmatching data in case of a left join. Right table, it gets unmatching data in case of a right join, and full outer join means both, right? So that's how basically the left outer and right outer works in a SQL, right? So difference between a where clause and a having clause, right? So where clause actually filters the data. Whenever you write something like where salary is greater than probably 1,000, so it gives you all the salaried employees whose salary is more than $1,000. And having clause is used for restricting the data whenever you use an aggregate function. In the earlier video, we have seen where having counts are greater than 1. Having clause is used when you want to filter the data based on your aggregate function. Maybe I can even write something like having some of the salary probably greater than $10,000, right? So whenever you want to filter the data based on the aggregate function, that is when you go for a having clause. Whenever you want to use the normal filtering criteria within a SQL, that time you go for a where clause. So can you have both where and having clause in SQL query? Yes, you can have it. There is no issue with respect to that. If you have a natural key, the customer ID, and there is a duplicate in the customer ID, how do you write a query to find the duplicates? Yesterday we have seen, based on the manager number, right? So if you remember, like if you want to understand the duplicates now based on the customer ID from a customer table, it's very simple. Like basically you write the customer ID column. Maybe this column is part of your, maybe a dim customer table, maybe for example, right? So dim customer, and you want to find the duplicates based on the customer ID, right? So you group the data based on the customer ID and having, let's say, the count of star greater than 1. So if the customer ID is being repeated more than once, then that's duplicate record. So we are going to get that. So this is to find the duplicates again in any table. If there is a duplicate, what is a query that you're going to write to identify the duplicates? You use a count function and identify the duplicate records. So how do you get the notifications for your job, and what are your job notification, and who creates a ticket, all of that, right? So in general, when you're working in any production support project, your jobs most of the times will be running a 24/7 or maybe a 16/5 5 schedule or whatever, right? So if those jobs are running, generally whenever a job gets failed, we create alerts. I mean, if you're using Autosys, Autosys automatically trigger an alert to the specified email addresses, whatever you have specified, and it will trigger the job notification, I mean, job error notification to your respective stakeholders via email. I mean, you get the email notification, and once you look at the email notification, then you can go to basically the Informatica to check it, like for what reason a particular workflow has failed, what is the issue is all about, and then you can go and look at the session log and understand what is the error it has thrown. You can look at the workflow properties to understand if there is an error which is failed at the workflow level, or you can even go and take a look at the Autosys and see what is the error. All of that, like you basically have to troubleshoot it and then proceed it. Like, who is going to create a ticket in the ServiceNow or a land desk? Like, see, if you're working in a production support project and you see that that process is not automated, then generally whenever there is a error notification of a job, you go and create a ticket in the ServiceNow or maybe in the Service Cloud or maybe land desk or anywhere. You go and create an incident based on the priority. I mean, you choose the priority and create an incident. But nowadays in the data warehousing projects, so this process generally automated. When I say automation, right? So suppose, let's say there is a the workflow failed, and you basically, as soon as the workflow gets failed, you want to create an incident to your ServiceNow, or you want to create an incident in the land desk. That entire process can be automated through a APIs or different ways. But if you want to, if there is no automation which is done, generally who creates a ticket? It's the production support engineer or a user who go and create a ticket saying that particular workflow is failed or a data is not available and all of that, right? So that is how you basically do it. If the automation is there, then the automation script automatically creates that ticket, right, in the ServiceNow or a Landesk. Okay, so now you got basically a report at the end of the day. 10 out, probably the 2 out of 10 jobs in your autosys has failed. And you got a report the day when you log into the work in the morning, and then you see that there are 2 autosys jobs which are failed in the failed status. Now, what are the steps that you're going to do? Like, once you look at basically you know that what autosys job is failed, you go and open an autosys and then probably look for that job and see the last error, why it has failed, and go and look at the log file. Basically the status of that job, for what reason it has failed. If you go and look at the log, you'll be able to understand whether it has failed because of the connectivity issue, or whether it has failed because of the Informatica issue, or whether it has failed because of the SQL query or a database issue, anything, right? So you go and look at it. If the error is not clear in the autosys, what you can do is you can find out what workflow is actually triggered by that autosys job. What workflow is triggered by that autosys job, and then you log into your Informatica production repository, go to the particular folder, open the workflow, and then go and look at the workflow log, session log, and then again the process same, right? So you go and find out the error, why it has failed, and then start troubleshooting it and fix the issue. That's how you do basically the troubleshooting of it. So whenever you see an error, it's all about troubleshooting. First, you need to look at the log files to understand the error, and then take the steps based on the error, what you see. So most of the times you may see an error, probably a unique constraint violation, or probably the, you're trying to insert maybe a 10 characters into an employee name, but from your source you have received 100 characters. Obviously, it cannot insert that record, and it will throw an error. So depending upon the error, you need to troubleshoot it and then correct the data and then take a next steps with respect to it. So that is more about your autosys jobs. And I'm moving on to the next question. Generally, what type of data modeling activities that you perform within an ETL project? So as I said in my earlier video, if you are actually a junior developer, generally you'll not involve in the data modeling activities. But if you're a tech lead or if you're a senior developer, generally you do take care of a data modeling activities as well. So data modeling activities will be done generally by using a tools like Erwin, as I covered in my training videos, or it may be with a SAP Power Designer, right? So SAP Power Designer, or maybe a ER Studio. These are all the various, the data modeling tools. So what do you do in a data modeling activities? Basically, first you understand the reporting requirements. You basically understand the reporting requirements, and then translate those reporting requirements into you translate them into a data model. You start with first the conceptual data model, and then the conceptual data model will be converted as a logical data model, and logical data model will be converted as a physical data model. So to broaden this, probably simplify this question, so you can say that data modeling activities like creating a tables, relationship between a tables, defining the constraints, defining the indexes on it, defining a star model, defining the snowflake model. All of those are generally the data modeling activities. Once a data model is ready, then you create those scripts in your target database or a data mart or a data warehouse, and then start building out the ETL jobs. So those are the data modeling activities generally you perform. So what is difference between a dimension and a fact table? It is more like a basic question. Dimension is something that which always captures the character data, and then the fact is more which captures the numeric data. So we can try and understand some of the examples. When you say dimension, it may be a product. Product is a dimension because it contains the descriptive attributes, or a customer is a dimension, or maybe a region is a dimension, or an address is a dimension. So all these are all the different examples for a dimension table. But in our warehouse, we refer it as product underscore dim or a dim underscore region or a dim underscore address or a dim underscore customer. And then the numeric information, basically it contains all the measurable information, right? So which is basically the claim fact. You can call it as a claim fact, or you may even call it as a policy fact. I mean, which contains all your policy related information, or you may be even call it as an order fact for invoicing data and all of that, right? So this is roughly about what is difference between a dimension and a fact. So what is surrogate primary key? So, and how did you generate this surrogate primary key in your solution? And I mean, is it at the database level or an Informatica level that you have created, right? See, yesterday we talked about the SCD type 2, wherein, when I was defining SCD type 2 table for a customer, I created basically the key called as a customer key. And customer ID is your primary key from your transactional system. Then you had a phone number, maybe the location and whatnot, right? So basically here the customer key, which is the new key that you have created in your data model within a data warehouse, this is your surrogate primary key. So how do you generally populate this SCD type 2 surrogate primary key or any surrogate primary key in the ETL implementation is that you basically populate that by using a sequence generator transformation, right? So you can do that sequence generator transformation, you can use it and then generate that unique value, or you can even populate in the database level as well. So while creating a table itself in Oracle or even in Teradata, you can always create that column as an identity column. Which means whenever you insert a record, automatically that surrogate primary key gets incremented, right? So either you can populate it using identity attribute within the Oracle, or you can even use the database sequence also to populate it, right? So that is also possible. There are various methods. Either you can implement it in the database level, or you can implement it in the ETL level by using a sequence generator transformation, or you can even implement it by using a lookup and expression transformation. In my training videos, I did mention this, like how you can generate a surrogate primary key by using a lookup and expression transformation, right? So this is the way that you can handle with this. And can you actually create the loops within the PLSQL? Yeah, PLSQL is a programming language. It does help you to define, process the collection of records within the PLSQL. So there are various PLSQL loops that you can actually create. One is called as a for loop, which it is there. Do while loop is there. So do while. These are all the different type of a loops that you can create within a PLSQL. It's a programming language. So you can refer to my PLSQL procedure videos, like which I have done. Why do we use the stored procedures in the database? And I mean, what purpose you use? What is the scenario? See, in the ETL, when you're working in an ETL project, it's very rarely that we actually define a stored procedure and perform it, but rather we implement all our logics within the ETL level itself. But in case if you have to touch upon, you can probably say that, I have created in my ETL project for dropping the indexes, I've created a stored procedure for which, it takes the table name and then drop all the indexes on it. And then again, for recreating the indexes, I have defined a stored procedure by using a dynamic SQL. And you can say that, and these procedures are actually being triggered from my basically the Informatica stored procedure transformation, you could say that. Or if there is a, you have a challenge in loading a large volume of data, and you want to handle that entire loading process within the entire ETL process within the database level, then you can create a stored procedure and then call that as well. So that is something that which you can do. I'm moving on to the next question. Basically, what is the difference between a administration console and when do you use a repository manager, and what is a repository service? More details I have covered in my Informatica architecture class. If you have access to it, you can probably check it in the YouTube. There are videos which are available. But when you talk about this administration console is basically generally accessed by the Informatica admins. As a developer, you may not have access to administration console, but however, I'll quickly show you what activities that you can actually perform it in the administration console. This is your Informatica admin console, wherein you can create a repository service, you can create an integration service. If you want to create the users within the Informatica roles within the Informatica, or you want to check like what kind of errors that your integration service has thrown or a repository service has thrown. All of these you can actually understand from a admin console. And if you want to take a backup of your repository, maybe restore your repository from a backup file, you want to add the nodes, delete the nodes, maybe change the passwords. All of these things can be done by using an administration console. If you refer to my Informatica architecture video, you'll be able to understand what are all the different functionalities that can be performed using an Informatica administrator, right? And when you look at the repository manager is generally used to create the different folders, be it as a shared folder or a general normal folder. If you want to assign the permissions to the folders, you do it. When you want to change your password, basically you can change the password using this option. If you want to create a deployment groups, you can do it. When you want to migrate the code from one repository to the other repository, you can do that by using an export and import as a deployment groups, as we discussed in the previous video. So all these things which we can understand with respect to that, right? So these are all various ways that you can various activities that you can actually perform using a repository manager. So talking about a repository service is something that which actually helps you to save your metadata definitions into a repository database. So whenever you create a mapping or whenever you create a session workflow, any activity that you perform in Designer, Workflow Manager, Workflow Monitor, the repository service helps you to save those definitions of your mapping session, all of them, into the repository database. Repository service helps you to save the metadata. That's it. And all your metadata gets captured in the repository database. So that is the purpose of your repository database. And the integration service is something that which takes care of performing your ETL operations. Basically, the ETL execution of the jobs and everything will be done by the integration service. So that is about your next question about what it is. So what is source qualifier transformation? Yeah, this is basically the basic one. Source qualifier transformation is a default transformation which gets added for every source definition that you drag and drop. Okay, suppose let's say if I have to take a look at okay, this mapping, probably if I go to any of these folders, and maybe I can open this folder, any source that you drag and drop into a mapping, by default, your source qualifier transformation gets added. You cannot remove the source qualifier transformation and connect directly from a source definition to your next level transformation. That is not possible. You must use a source qualifier transformation whenever you're reading a data from a flat file or probably from a relational table, or even XML case, it's a different XML source qualifier transformation gets created, but source qualifier is a default transformation. So what you can do, if it is a relational table, you can combine the multiple tables here, you can write a query, you can filter the data based on that, you can sort the data, you can use a pre-SQL, post-SQL options. All of that is possible using a source qualifier. So you can customize the query only if it is a relational target. If it is probably a flat file, you cannot customize it using that. So that is your source qualifier transformation. Next one, how many mappings you develop? See, typically, if you're actually working in a project of 3 to 6 months time, you may be developing roughly about 10 to 15 mappings, which actually covers again with the different transformations, all of that. It is more a generic question. It varies from a project to project, but you can always tell what about. So can you tell about autosys? Yeah, we did discuss yesterday the different type of schedulers. Autosys is one of the scheduler where you can actually trigger the jobs, your Informatica workflows using an autosys. Again, PMCMD is basically the command which you use for triggering it. So production support, yes, we did talk about the production support yesterday. Whenever you are done with your testing and deploy it into the production, somebody has to maintain that entire application. Those are nothing but your data ops team. When you're part of a data ops team, your responsibilities include monitoring of your ETL jobs. Whenever a ETL job is failed, you're going to troubleshoot it, fix them, and then restart the jobs. All these kind of different activities that you perform within a production support. Can you mention the different type of transformation you worked with? As I said, it depends upon the transformation logic that you're implementing. In yesterday's video we discussed, it is more about your aggregator, basically a sorter, router, depending upon your comfort and what you have used, you can explain that. What do you use? When do you use an aggregator transformation? Yeah, yesterday we discussed aggregator transformation is more like a group by clause. Basically, whenever you want to perform the aggregated values like sum, maybe count, average, all of these, like when you want to do it, you use a aggregator transformation. What type of sources you have used in your ETL development? Yeah, if you're working in it, like you can say that, okay, I've integrated the data from flat files, XML files, Oracle database, maybe an SQL Server database. And if you have integrated a data from Salesforce, all of that you can basically talk about with respect to that. And then the last question, probably the last question. So if your source is having 100 rows and you defined an ETL job, and that has loaded only 50 when you ran it, and you understand that 50 records are not loaded, and how are you going to debug it, or how are you going to handle the situation, right? See, first step that you need to find out is, what are the 50 records that are not loaded, right? What are the 50 records that are not loaded? Once you understand it, then you can go and look at it. But why it is not loaded, you can always go and take a look at your session log and see if there are any rejected rows because of some database issue, all of that. And then check if it is being rejected by it and why it has rejected. Looking at an error, you can understand it. Even after looking at it, if the clue, if it is not really clear why Informatica is rejecting it, either you can use a debugger within the mapping level to address that, or debug it by row by row. So suppose, let's say, from ODS employee, some of the rows are not loaded to any of these targets. So I can run a debugger. We have discussed this debugger, how it runs, how it works. Basically, you can use the different options here and run the debugger and see why the particular record is not getting loaded. So to make the debugging process simple, whatever the record is not loaded, using that, you can filter the data here if it is a relational target, and then run the debugger and see where it is not getting loaded into a particular table within that. So you can, or debugger is always helpful within your development environment to debug or replicate any issue. So that is the way that you actually understand. And when you compare the data, you should be able to determine like what records are not loaded within a target table. So with this, I'm winding up this video. Thank you. I'm stopping.